That's better. Test 1, 2.
That's on.
Test 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Oh, that looks good. That's okay. Yeah, not terrible anyway. Let's check this one. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Oh, is that working?
Okay, so I think
Testing. Testing. Yeah, it's working. Okay. So, and you're hanging around?
yeah, do we need to turn on downstairs or not? Probably not.
No, it looks like we don't have too many people who are. Okay. So it's broadcasting now, right? Okay.
Come and sit down.
Salad?
I can't stay, but I might eat something and run.
I do that one better.
You like that one better?
Well, because I'm more used to the controls.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we have served yourself salad on the counter. All the goodies for the salad are around the outside, so if you don't want them, dig in the middle.
We take our plate.
Yeah,
I can just bring the bowl with gifts in that for one too.
Where are the muffins?
Right there.
they're biscuits, not muffins.
Good biscuits, that's what I meant. Thank you.
Who made them?
We made everything.
Right down.
I'm sorry?
It was a group effort.
Wow.
Debbie and Janine and I.
That's fantastic.
There's also drinks up there and ice. Okay, where did my water go?
Actually, yeah, I've been fortunate last year, my company.
So how are things?
It's fine.
Yeah? You golf?
No,
Oh, you got a great tan.
thank you.
Because he's outside mowing the lawn all the time.
I'm retired. I'm retired. So.
How much would you charge if I brought you up to Spokane to do my lawn? My,
What the size?
it's big.
It's big.
Yeah, it's big.
No.
I'm on 3/4 of an acre. This year is the first year I can't do it. Next year I'll be okay. But our Katya's boyfriend, who's with us, is on a 5-week program in Germany. He's a history major with emphasis on 19th century Germany. So Eastern Washington University has a program 5 weeks in the summer in places. Hitler's birth town.
Everyone in my neighborhood pay for someone else to come once a week, and I'm the only one.
Yeah.
Twice a week.
You have to do it twice a week? Or you must do a lot of fertilizer.
I don't know. I was told that I was doing it too low.
Ah.
So now I just.
Yeah,
do the right side.
when it goes over 90 degrees, you have to have, I do it at 5 inches because my house faces south, so my whole front lawn is in the sun all day long. And you got to have longer.
And I already discovered that the Bermuda grass is trying to take over the other time.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm fighting that.
In fact, my daughter and I just did it, today's Thursday, so we did it Sunday, and I was looking this morning, I got to do it again. The temperature's just right, and cool evening, so it's not getting stressed. But my hostas are starting to turn, so it's
I'm gonna move this, so we
It's
don't
fall.
need it.
I got
Let's
it.
go put it on that plate. And this over there, so we have
Got it?
more room. And you can have a little more room. I don't know
Oh.
how your leg is.
Linda, are we having salad first or the whole?
You can have whatever you want, now that it's all done.
there we go. Go ahead.
He's moving around.
No, you didn't tell me your anniversary. What a way to spend your anniversary.
Hey, life goes on, you know.
I know.
Do what you have to do, right?
Yeah, that our anniversary date is sacred in our family. God help me if I ever plan anything
Yeah.
to interfere.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're a little ahead of you,
Yeah. Well,
but
it
still.
is a good one though. It's double
Oh,
high.
it's great. Everyone is great.
Everyone is
Especially
great.
everyone was taking odds how long we would last. Oh. She gets a medal for sure, but I think I deserve one too.
Everybody gets a medal. Who does? Everybody.
Vanya gets a medal, but I deserve one too. In Hebrew, it's savlanut, patience.
Ask Naomi.
I mean, we come from, I thought, perfect girl. You know, Holocaust survivor, grew up in Texas, the whole 9 yards. A nechtigen tug. She comes from a matriarchal family. Her mother ran the house. I came from a patriarchal family. And
You both want to be, you're the,
then,
You're the A.
right, and the matriarch saw me as taking her daughter away. 3 years she battled me until I convinced her.
It's not surprising, but dads do that too
Yeah,
with their girls, so.
so you've been traveling?
Not too much,
Not too
really.
much.
Yeah, we're going to travel some in October, November, and then we're going to be grandparents again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Hannah's having
Really?
a baby in December.
Mazel tov.
So,
Mazel tov. That's
but
nice.
It's down in San Francisco, so we don't, she won't tell us the sex, and so I figure it must be a girl because she's going to have to plan if it's a boy, and she's going to want a bris, and so we're going to have to make some
Yeah,
decisions.
yeah.
So we're gonna see her. We're going on a 1 week cruise, and then we're gonna be in Indio for a week. Then we're gonna dance that weekend. Then we're gonna drive up from Indio to San Francisco,
Great.
and then we'll
Great.
fly home. But so that'll be in end of October, November, and so then and so I'll just bring it up to her and say, well, where can we get this stuff if it's a boy? Because she and Josh know, but they're not telling, and that's fine. I don't.
Well, in San Francisco, if it's a boy, it's not going to be a problem getting a moral.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah.
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 So, the most important thing right now is that she is well
Yeah.
and the baby's well. That's
Yeah.
the most important stuff.
Exactly. Well, she was sick the first trimester,
Oh.
so, and they were going to go on a 570-mile San Francisco to LA bike ride,
Oh,
and they canceled it.
Good.
She said,
that's a good idea.
first off, it wasn't going to be fun to be pregnant and throwing up.
Right.
Second, it wasn't going to be, I'm not sure how I could get myself hydrated
And fed.
and fed.
Right.
And,
It's-
yeah.
You got to eat every half hour on the bike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she probably would throw up right after.
Yeah. God.
So, are you going to eat something?
Yeah, I'm following you.
Oh, yeah. No, I got to get my plate.
That would be a good idea.
Rabbi,
I eat fish.
I'm from a kibbutz, okay? You know
Okay.
that.
I won't hold that against you.
We used to have pork every Wednesday,
Used to.
to eat pork
Oh,
every
re-
Wednesday.
Yeah, well.
The white chicken, the white meat.
Oh, the white. Okay. The other. It's advertised as
very
the
good.
other white meat.
And it's so good.
So it's not kosher for me to kiss her, right?
Not when she has it on her lips. No. But sometimes you have to do certain things for love. What can I say? Janine, are you going to join us?
I am going to in a minute.
Okay.
I'm just trying to.
Weren't the
No, it's not. Okay. Those of you that may be tuning in now or sometime later, again, I forgot to turn on my microphone. All right, but you didn't miss anything.
We can hear you.
All right. No, they're taping. They're taping, yeah. So here is the answer for kashrut. Many of the 613 commandments come from all the different laws of kashrut, and we're not going to address every single aspect of kashrut tonight. That's not what this is about. All right? I'll just say it. I wish I had made it up, but I got it from somewhere else. The reason for kashrut is God said it, I believe it, that settles it. I did see that on a bumper sticker in a parking lot at the Southwest Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth, Texas. It's the largest Southern Baptist seminary in the world, and the Dean of Education is a personal friend of mine, great guy, and he brought me there this particular day because they have all of their, come on, Jack, missionaries from all over the world come in for continuing education. And he said, they really need to be exposed to you, Jack, and I can handle it. But I saw this as I'm pulling into where I was going to park on the bumper of a car parked there, and I said, damn, the Baptists, they got it before we did. Yep, I admit freely. But that is really, when everything's all boiled down, the reason for the mitzvot, all of them. We're supposed to have enough faith to believe that God is an ethical God. In fact, Judaism in part is described as ethical monotheism, a belief in one God that has to be ethical. Not only do we have to be ethical, we have the right to expect God to be ethical as well. And part of that is we believe that God would never ask us to do something that would harm us.
Okay, but we know that Hashem spoke theoretically the Ten Commandments to Moses, right, on Mount Sinai.
Okay.
But did Hashem also speak to Moses of the 613? Where did the 613
Okay,
come from?
it's a good question. So where did the 613 mitzvot come? We only read about the 10 on top of Mount Sinai. And a flippant answer would be, those are the top 10. No, they're not. But we don't see the mitzvot in a pecking order. But your question is good, and the answer is the Jewish law is called halakha. And, sorry, I thought that, do you mind opening this while I talk? Thank you. I just didn't look carefully enough at the package. It comes from the word holech, to go, to walk. Halakha, the way in which we Jews are supposed to go, walk. Our life is supposed to be ordered by the mitzvot. And so the question is, where did the other 603 come from? Well, there are two sources. One, from the black letters of the Torah. It's written. It's written. We're going to talk about what we are permitted to eat. The Torah doesn't spend time telling us about what we can't. It's sort of like our Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, says what our rights are. And then it says, and the federal government shall not impinge upon any of these rights. End of conversation. Same way in Jewish law. You have the black letters. On Yom Kippur afternoon, we read about the sexual relationships that are considered asur, forbidden, in Judaism. Other times we read the dietary laws. What four-legged animals are we allowed to eat? What fish, aquatic animals are we allowed to eat, and so forth and so on. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight. But that doesn't account for all 613 commandments. So where did the other ones come from? Well, you already know the answer. I just need to pull it out of you. So, the black letters covers both the mishpatim, the ones that make sense to us, and the chukim, just believe it because God said it, and that settles it. But that still doesn't account for 613. The source of the other ones, you already know. How long did it take God to create the world? 6 days. The seventh, even God needed to rest. That was some heavy lifting God had to do. All right? So if God can create the world, the whole thing, in 6 days, according to the Torah, then how come it took how long on top of Mount Sinai?
40 days.
40 days. Now the number 40 it's one of those numerical codes that we have in the Torah. The number 40 is used to tell us it was a long time, a lot. Noah built the ark and then it rained for
40 days.
40 days, a lot of water, probably worse than what we saw happen in the Bahamas yesterday. All right? God bless those people. I mean, the hurricane that I talked about last year on Rosh Hashanah in Corpus Christi, Hurricane Allen, it also parked itself right over the city. And the destruction I described in my Yontif sermon was because it parked not quite as long as Dorian was over the Bahamas, but that's pretty destructive. The wind keeps howling and howling, and the rain keeps falling, and it doesn't move. That's pretty bad. So, what's the answer? If God can create the whole world in 6 days, how come it took 40 days to reveal the law?
Took longer.
You know the answer. You know the answer.
Because he was dictating it to Moses.
Because he was dictating it to Moses, and we know that Moses was a slow learner. Why did, when God at the burning bush told Moses, you're going down back to Egypt and you're going to tell Pharaoh, let my people go. All right? Now we break out in song. No. All right.
But the bottom line is it came from God.
Yes.
To a man, a person, who then interpreted it, applied it.
No.
Down in
No.
writing,
No.
down in writing somewhere.
What the tradition is that happened at Sinai, the written word was, here you go, Moses. You got it. All right? What God couldn't give Moses in writing form was the explanation, and that's the other part of the 613. And today we make the difference that we have Halacha Sinai, the law from Sinai, the black letters, and then we have Halacha de Rabbanan, the rabbinical laws. For instance, in the Shema, first paragraph, book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, it says, and you shall take these words. Which words? Shema Yisrael. You're supposed to take these words and wrap them on your arm. I'm quoting the Torah now. And they shall be, I don't know what frontlets mean, but should be something on your forehead. All right? So, how do I do it? And the Torah is famous for telling us what, but never how. It doesn't. We see the word shechita, ritual slaughter, in the Torah. It's written there. What is it? Torah, give or take, is from 1200 before the Common Era, give or take. The rabbinical period started 1,000 years later in Babylonia, about 200 before the Common Era. And so why 200? In 300, before the Common Era, what we call the Torah today, or actually the whole Jewish scripture, was canonized. It was closed. There were some existing writings that didn't make it into the canon, and others that did. Very similar to what happened in the Catholic Church in 300 of the Common Era, the canonization of Christian scriptures. And then the rabbis, now that the Torah the whole Tanakh is closed, Now they said, okay, how do we do this? And we have the rabbinical period, which produced the Talmud 700 years later. All right? Took 700 years of notes is what makes up the Talmud. And that's the rabbinical law. It has its origin. We know the word shechita. What does it mean? We need the... So, yeah, go ahead.
But the point is that in the Jewish religion, you know, you either believe or you don't. I mean, that's the true reality.
Yeah.
When you say, let me just finish. When
Sure.
you say, for example, to not eat pork. I mean, it's one of the fundamental rules, right, of the law of kashrut. We don't eat.
It's one of the only animals that's by black letters is prohibited.
Okay, and so some could rationalize that the reason for that is because pork in you know, in the Egypt
Was a source of disease.
Was disease,
Right.
and pathetic, and you know, killed people.
Right.
And so you know, our law was going to be nowhere we ever eat.
What was
pork.
the verb that you used?
Forbidden?
Rationalize?
Yes. And we modern Jews insist that everything be rational.
You know, because the other thing on the fish, the fish side of it, okay, fins, gills, scales, you know, and everything else, you know, is marginal or not kosher. You know, crab and shrimp. And,
But they're
and
scavengers.
and
They're scavengers.
they're scavengers. And is there a rationalization to that as well, which was because all of those animals were also, you know, putrid, coming out of the Sinai Peninsula, off
Right.
the Sinai Peninsula.
And so that's what I was talking with Batya before we started, that Batya, may I share? Yeah. Batya asked me, she always heard that the reason we Jews are supposed to keep kosher is that would bring us Jews together. Eating is a social activity. And therefore Jews would be with each other because you're only going to eat where there's kosher food. Is that true? And she said, just like that, is that true? And it's part of the rationalization. If it's true for you, that's fine. But the reason we have to rationalize is because we live, especially here in our country, right now in 2019, faith is under attack.
Right.
And so we sort of have to go with the flow.
But here's the other component of that rationalization. But of all the stuff that you know, Moses and Hashem said was not kosher, not edible, locusts was okay.
No. Grasshoppers, yes.
Grasshoppers, sorry.
Locusts, no. I was going to bring that up.
Grasshoppers were okay because they ate them. They fed on those while they were wandering around in the desert, right? They ate the grasshoppers.
Yes.
And grasshoppers were made available.
So you're looking for a rationalization. Why yes to the grasshoppers, no locusts? I got an answer for you, but just hold on a minute. That's an excellent question, and it is a rationalization, but it's a rationalization that holds up. Okay, but just I beg your indulgence just for a couple of minutes. Okay. What is the difficulty with trying to rationalize something that we're supposed to accept on faith? And I wish we had thought of the word Islam before Islam did. Islam means to bend one's will to the will of God. And in fact, in Pirkei Avot, the part of the Mishnah, the saying of our elders, it says, if you bend your will to God, God will bend his will to you. So Judaism is all about bending our will to the will of God, which again takes us free American Jews. It's hard to swallow for us. What's the difficulty with trying to rationalize it all and not accepting it on faith? Rationalization, what's the problem with that?
Because rationalizations can fail.
Exactly.
And when
Exactly.
it fails, you don't
So,
have anything to hold on
right,
to.
let's take the pork and trichinosis. Absolutely, in the time the Bible was revealed, definitely disease, so forth and so on. If you've never seen a pigsty, go see one, you'll understand in a minute. And this is the 21st century. But the problem,
But a chicken coop ain't that better, much better either. No. But there-
I have seen some excellent chicken coops. I've never seen a clean pigsty, ever. The problem with rationalization is we live in an age today that through technology we've been able to eradicate almost all disease. It's coming back now because of politics, but trichinosis here in the United States, we know if a pig is diseased or not. And it, yep, and the herd is slaughtered. The whole herd is slaughtered. So, if we accept rationalization as the reason, well, now that we've conquered the objection,
So now
we can eat pork. Right, that's the problem.
That's the rationale.
Right, and that's the danger, though, in the rationalization, because rationalization is not forever. Something, why the milk and meat? We now know that that there's a problem in the gut with bacteria if someone eats a lot of cheeseburgers, for example. And will I get sick? Chances are no. But the question is, if we accept the existence of God and we are subservient to God, and God has to be ethical, would God ask us to do something that's going to make us sick? No. So the rationalization breaks down right there. There has to be something else, and God said it. The milk and meat thing we're going to get to, because that's an interesting journey of that law, and I'll share it with you. Yes, it's up there. Okay, you shall not boil the kid in its mother's milk. We'll get into it since you said it. That verse appears 3 times in the 5 books of Moses. Each time in the context of Shavuot. Shavuot is the Chag HaBikurim, the festival of the first fruits. So it's late spring, early summer. All right? What's happening in late spring, early summer?
Babies.
Babies.
Animal babies.
Right? Absolutely. What else? The whole world turns green.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe you're ahead of the curve here in the Tri-Cities, but up in Spokane, we don't, in Spokane specifically, you don't plant until Mother's Day, and that's in May. All right? Just 30 miles from us, in Kootenai County, the beginning of the foothills of the Rockies in North Idaho, it's Memorial Day, 2 weeks later. But the fact is, that's the time of year when rebirth takes place. So the mystery of what is that verse doing, first of all, it's got to be important if it's said 3 times. God doesn't repeat God's self. But this is 3 times, and each time with the festival of late spring, early summer. And we didn't know until the late 20th century, through biblical archaeology, that the Canaanites had a fertility rite in the late spring, early summer. Animal babies and, yep. They would take a baby kid and boil it in its mother's milk as a fertility rite.
Who did that?
The Canaanites, the people among whom our ancestors settled. And throughout the Torah, God gives the Israelites a warning as they're making their way to the promised land. Don't follow the ways of the people among whom you live. Hanukkah bushes are no. So this is the rabbis always interpreted this, don't boil the kid in its mother's milk, as, again, the code of the Torah telling us to not eat milk and meat at the same time. But now we know the real origin of that. It was anathema to the sensibility of the Israelites in Canaan. And this it seems that this practice was done for centuries, not decades, for centuries, even among the Jews. We even did a little human sacrifices too.
Okay, but would that have been also a dictated from Hashem to Moshe?
This would, yes,
Or
yes.
is it some, know, is there something that was observed and dealt with as we moved?
According to the tradition, this would have been why it took 40 days for God to teach Moses the word. And that's why in Orthodoxy, both the Torah law, the black letters, and the rabbinic law, that which the rabbis developed in explaining how do we do these things, both are divine in origin and therefore unchangeable. All right? In the conservative movement, they're called halacha d'Rabbanan, the law of the rabbis. Well, last I checked, we rabbis pull our clothes on one leg at a time. We breathe, we bleed, all the regular stuff. So we rabbis are human. Some rabbis think they're God, but we rabbis are human. Therefore, in the conservative movement, we agree with the Orthodox that the written law, the black letters, are from God. We're not God. We don't get to change them. The rabbinic laws, however, are from human beings, well-meaning human beings who truly in the Talmud believe that they were, my Rebbe said it's always, that's how it's, every statement by a Talmud rabbi starts, my Rebbe said, and he said it in the name of Rabbi so-and-so and so-and-so. So you can follow the genealogy of that particular law. But if they were able to interpret it, then we should be able to interpret it today. And that's why we conservative rabbis have a pretty heavy burden on our shoulders, because that tradition is passed to us, and we have to deal with, well, like in the 1950s, the first open heart surgery was using pig valves, and of course the obvious question, no, but that is, today we have other cutting, and we have sort of motherhood and all this kind of stuff, and I deal with medical ethics up in Spokane, so I will always use a medical example. So in the conservative movement, it's dynamic. I'm afraid that our movement has gone a little beyond the original platform of 1917. They're also reinterpreting Torah law, but that's for a different time. We're sticking with kashrut.
So how did poultry get thrown in there?
Great question. I was going to bring it up, but let's deal with it now. So, great question. So
We argue about it all the time.
So the Torah, in terms of kashrut, divides animals into several divisions. We're talking about four-legged animals, all right? Behemoth, cow, deer, so forth and so on. And all the Torah says is, yeah, not chicken. Good point. That's a good point.
Chickens and turkeys, and they don't have four legs.
Fowl, just a minute. I'm a sort of in Moses' league. I can't do them all in one shot. God, the Torah says, "B'dibur echad." We have it in Lechadodi, that God created the world with one word. Well, we rabbis are human, so it takes a little bit more than one word. In four-legged animals, they have to have cloven hoofs, split hooves. Right. Cloven hooves and chew the cud. Right. If you don't know, well, we're at dinner. Look up a cow and how the cow digests its food, and you'll. I don't want to just.
We learned that in kindergarten.
What?
Don't they have two stomachs? Yeah, two stomachs.
I didn't.
They have more than that.
They barf up their food from their first stomach into their second stomach and chew it all over again.
Adults, and most of us
Yeah.
are moms here, so we, you know,
So, all right. I'm just trying to be kind. What can I say? All right. So, that's four-legged animals. Fowl. Oh, and only the Torah mentions only two animals in the forbidden range. Everything else, you'll figure it out, and that makes kosher easy because does it have a split hoof and chew the cud? Well, the pig has the split hooves, but it doesn't chew the cud, and the Torah calls it out by name that it's prohibited. Anyone know what the second? There's only a camel. Very good. Very good, Drew. The camel. All right, because it looks like it has split hooves, but there's a web underneath it. It's not a split hoof. It's for, to walk in the desert. All right, fowl. Okay? No birds of prey. Prey with an E. Okay?
That eagle you're gonna.
The eagle, the hawk, falcon,
The kites.
all the birds that eat other animals. All right? So that leaves us the chicken, the turkey, the duck, the goose, and a few others. Okay? All right. Pigeon, quail, pheasant, the upland birds, and so forth. Yeah, it's not a bird of prey. We don't have peacocks native to most of the places that Jews live, but if they lived where there are peacocks and they're eaten, no biggie there. Okay? So we still haven't answered the question. And then we'll just put aquatic animals. Whoops. Have to have fins and scales. Okay. Now, why these characteristics, only animals with these characteristics may be eaten by Jews? By the way, kasher, after I answer this question, I want to explain some terms, okay? But kasher means fit to eat. That's what the word means, all right? And nothing is kasher just because it's on that list. These are terms I'll try to teach you. Yeah, but the Hebrew word is mutar. They're permitted, but that doesn't make them kasher. Okay, so we'll come to that. So the rabbis look at this list. Let's answer that question, and then let's try to make sense of what is this list about. What is the bigger message here? So the rabbis in the Talmud asked the very question you did, Linda. They said, well, what about the chicken? One of the most common fowl, even if you were poor, you had a chicken for Shabbos. It might be the only meat you eat, but they had a chicken, so they asked the question. And the rabbis didn't know the answer to the question. And here separates what the rabbis did versus scholars of other religions. They said, let's go and see what the people do. So they asked one of the servants of the rabbis, please go to the meat market, here's some money, and buy us some meat. He came back with the money. What happened? They didn't have any meat. They did have chicken, but you said, buy us some meat. Right then, the rabbis realized that the people, not them, but the people, did not consider chicken to be here. Okay? So the question was, where is it? And so they sent him back and said, now buy us some fish. They wanted to see if fish was also considered meat by the people. And he came back empty-handed again.
They only had chicken.
They only had chicken. All right? So that's the rabbi's rule based on what the people already do.
So chicken is a meat.
Chicken, they decided, is too meaty. It's too much like meat to say it's not. So it's meat. But fish, here's another word we'll learn, parv. It's neutral. We'll get to that. All right? But
by that explanation, if he didn't buy the chicken because it wasn't meat, then
oops.
it's not meat. It's parv.
But they said if we rule that it's parv, no one's going to believe it.
Does anything parv have blood? Does chicken
No,
have blood?
no. That's the separation between this and these two here. Is aquatic animals are cold-blooded. So This is from the black letters,
And it's okay.
but the inclusion of fowl in meat is from the rabbis.
Okay, so let me ask you a very off-the-wall question. The grasshoppers we talked about.
Yes.
Are they meat, fowl, or what? What are they?
Great question.
Considered meat? Can I eat?
What do you-
Can I eat them with? Can
By
I
the way,
have
what do you-
Can I have a grasshopper in a glass of
So
milk?
what? Let's in answering the question about the grasshoppers, there are several species that are missing from this list of permitted insects,
Arachnids.
arachnids. That's insect. That's
Those are spiders.
Oh, gosh.
yeah. We're missing the marsupials.
Yeah.
Yeah. No squirrels. We can't eat squirrel. Skunk, porcupine, all that stuff. Oh, what? Yeah, but right, exactly. So, what isn't on this list, we are not supposed to eat.
But grasshoppers are.
Grasshoppers is an exception to the no insects. All right? Why grasshoppers and not locusts?
Locusts were used in the plague in Egypt.
Yeah,
I mean,
that-
they're
yeah.
not really a good sign.
Yeah, they were bad.
Which is also because they were a bad sign in the plagues in Egypt. It's also why we're not allowed to have a shofar from a cow's horn, the golden calf.
And I have actually even heard people say that we're not supposed to visit Egypt.
Yes, the kings of Israel were forbidden by God. It's right there in the second part of the Tanakh. They were forbidden to go to Egypt for two reasons. Horses. They had enough troubles with the camel, food-wise. The horses and the foreign influence. So Bathsheba wasn't from Egypt, but she created a big problem because she was a foreigner.
Before you go onto your terms, so one is we follow these rules because they're the law. And that's.
Yeah, the origin is from God.
Right.
Right.
Second, we are living among a foreign people. So part of it, you said was to kind of set us apart a little bit. We can go to a Jew's home, eat kosher and things like that. People in the day could do that, and they would worry about eating something that was forbidden. So that was a second thing. And we didn't take the ways of the foreign people by eating just everything. And the third thing, I think, and kashrut raises the spirituality of eating. So if you're thinking about what you're putting in your mouth, so if you're not just being gluttonous and just eating to be eating, if you're thinking about it, and kashrut requires a certain amount of diligence,
Discipline.
So
The
then it elevates human function to a little bit higher plane.
Debbie brought up the third reason that we follow the Torah. There has to be, for the Jew, there has to be more than just God said it, I believe it, and that settles it. There is the differentness. Every single halacha, every single one, makes us different than all the other people. Every single one.
Now, why is this positive necessarily?
It is a very positive thing because Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh, we're supposed to be a kingdom of priests. That means we're supposed to be a spiritual people, and a Goy Kadosh, a holy people. The word Kadosh doesn't mean holy, unless you understand what holy really means. Holy means not profane. Holy means different than regular. To be an Or L'Goyim, a light unto the nations, you have to be noticeable. You have to be separate. You have to, for the scientists among us. All right. Barely even shows up, right? I'm pointing it at the table. Barely shows up. All right. Now watch what happens. Where's the switch? Oh, This is important. This is important. Now, because it is the only light, because it is the only light, we see it. There's a difference between this light that's coming from the flashlight and the rest of the room. So, to fulfill our obligation to be a light into the nations, a positive influence on the world, we have to be noticed. And what are we noticing? The way you and I live. That's what makes us different. It's also one of the two historical sources of anti-Semitism is our differentness. To be a Jew means to live differently. And the third reason for the kashrut especially is that there's a spiritual aspect to everything we do. And it gives an not orderliness, but orderedness to our life. It's not the, in Talmud we read about hefker, just found stuff that doesn't belong to anybody. No, what we are supposed to do as Jews, or not do as Jews, is not from just anywhere, it's just from God. And it gives a spiritual flavor to our life, even at the table. And the rabbis say, it's in the Talmud, to eat at a table without a word of Torah is like eating at a table with animals. And that's true. And kashrut itself is Torah. And so there is a spiritual nature. It's a specialness. In fact, all the years that I taught for classes for conversion, when we got to kashrut, there was always going to be somebody in class, you Jews give a lot of thought to what you put on the table, don't you? And I said, oh yeah. You learn all about reading food labels real fast. And most people, for us it's a way of life. For most people, just go down the aisles and look. I'm talking about not Jews. Most people, they give very little thought to what they're putting, in their shopping basket.
But a sub-feature of what's on that list is also the way in which it's butchered, and the way in which it's and prepared.
Yeah, I didn't want to get into shechita, but
I understand that, but here is the most important question to me. Is there any alcoholic beverage that is not kosher? Assuming, is there any reason I couldn't drink, beer or
it's parv.
or tequila
It's parv.
or whatever with any of
It's parv.
They haven't ruined alcohol.
It's neutral. The only concern of kashrut,
Is there any non-kosher alcoholic beverage out
yes,
there anywhere?
wine.
Wine? Yeah, it has to be made.
But that comes from the days when Israelites were worshiping idols more than they were doing what God wanted them to do. And so wine became something that had to be kosher so that non-Jews who might be making the wine didn't put a curse on it, knowing that that's sacramental wine that they're making. I know it's Middle Ages, but that is the reason why only wine, it's the only alcoholic beverage that has to have a hechsher, a kosher seal on it.
Now, Rabbi, the Muslim have the halal. Is it the same?
You want to know? You want to know the little nasty secret about halal?
Is it the same as kosher?
You want to know the little nasty secret about halal?
Yeah.
All of the halal meat that goes into Saudi Arabia comes from kosher slaughterhouses in America.
Really?
Yes. But the kingdom doesn't let the citizens know where that meat's coming from.
Also from Israel.
Because we thought it was the same process.
We should get some consideration for that.
Now, just why these? Anybody see a bigger message in this? This really gives. Oops! This gives it away right here.
The feathers?
The foul. These are all pastoral animals. Even the fish that are permitted, they're not bottom feeders. Shark is not included in this. Whales aren't included. They're mammals, but there's not, they didn't know that then. These are all pastoral animals. Remember, I think probably 70s and 80s, well, I guess some of you don't. A very common phrase, you are what you eat. Yeah. That's a Jewish thought. Yeah. That's the real basis of God, of the origin of this is, why does it matter to God one way or the other, what you and I eat? Because we're supposed to be a special people, a pastoral people. Yes, we have to fight for self-defense. We're allowed to do that. Well, we are. We are.
You are, Bacha.
God calls us the chosen people. God chose us. Some Jews take that a little too far. That, look at me. I'm just high and mighty. No, I prefer to use the present. We're a choosing people every day, in every facet of our life. We choose to either live as Jews or not. Some more than others, some less than others. But that's what this is all about. If we're going to be a light unto the nations, that we're going to set an example that other people may think about following, we have to be noticed. We have to be different. Different isn't better than. It's different than. Judaism never, that's why we don't have missionaries. Judaism never believed we're the only way to know God. We're one of many ways to know God. And each one is different. We believe that it's a mission from God to live differently.
And even in Judaism, Jews know God differently.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's, you used to have only Orthodox. But so you had dati or lo dati, right? You were observant or you weren't observant. Then comes the German Jews of the 19th century, and now you have Reform. There is no law.
Yeah, they were
they're guidelines. Guidelines. Well, I've mentioned at Friday night services several times how influenced the German Reform movement was by the Lutheran Church, the state church of Germany. The music, a lot. Even the rabbis dressed like Protestant priests. Okay, so you want to know why kosher? Because God wants us to live that way. Message, try to be a peaceful people. Sometimes you can't be, but we strive to be. And that's the spiritual message when we're sitting and eating together, things we can eat, things we can't eat. That's why, right? And the degree to which you and I want to be different in the way we live from the folks that live around us is the degree to which we're going to be identified with and identifiable by our Jewish lives. Kashrut is just a piece of a larger picture. Okay? Okay. Question? No. Terms. I'm not teaching you vocabulary, but it gives us an idea of what's going on in kashrut. Okay. First, any animal that wasn't on here is asur. Asur. Whoops. Means forbidden. Now, what's true about the word forbidden, I'm not spelling right, but I don't care. All right. Forbidden, there's no maybe yes, maybe no. Forbidden means ain't happening. All right? Forbidden, asur. There's no way to take any animal that wasn't in it's supposed to be consuming it. All right? And you have the opposite. Yes. Oops. Mutar. Permitted. So, all of the animals included in the classifications that we had there in blue are mutar. They're permitted. That doesn't make them kasher. But we can choose from that list. They are mutar. Okay? So, the warm-blooded animals, which was the four-legged animals, and the fowl, have to be ritually slaughtered. We're not going to get into that. But through the ritual slaughter and the inspection that follows that comes the word kasher. All right, kasher. I'm not going to write the whole thing out. Fit to eat. Okay? It has to come from it has to be a permitted animal, a mutar, that was slaughtered and inspected properly, and it becomes kasher, fit to eat. Take a mutar animal, a deer, and shoot it. It's not kasher, it's not fit to eat, because we didn't slaughter the animal humanely. How humane slaughter is defined by the rabbis. Okay? Now the word we all screw up is trefa, or we call it treif. Now you'll hear some says, yeah, I had some bacon, it was treif. No. If it wasn't on the list, it's asur. It is forbidden. There's no way.
That is kosher.
There's no way. Ain't no way. The rabbis believed in a siyag to build a fence around the Torah. That's why candle lighting is not supposed to be closer than 18 minutes before sunset.
Right, yes.
To keep us away from waiting too long, and then we get a phone call and boom, we didn't light the candles. All right? There ain't no way to take an asur animal and make it kasher, and it ain't treif either. Treifa is a mutar animal that did not go through the ritual slaughter. So that same deer that someone shoots is treifa. It ain't pork and it ain't camel. Right? They're asur, and I think it's misusing the word treifa started on purpose. We shouldn't feel too sinful when we do it.
Right, rationalization.
Yeah. But there's no mistaking the word forbidden. It is forbidden. And the fence that the rabbi said, Jews aren't even allowed to raise them. You can't wear leather made out of pigskin. Thank God the footballs I played with were faux leather. Yeah, faux leather. But asur is asur.
There's one exception. Pikuach nefesh. If I don't have anything to eat.
Yeah, pikuach nefesh is an overriding principle that 610 of the 613 commandments are null and void in the face of saving a life. So you're stuck out somewhere. I'm sorry?
That's what the grass.
Well, they ate that out of protein, and probably, Moses was about to say you can't eat grasshoppers because God said so, and they said, what?
Yeah,
You kidding me? Yeah, it's protein out in the desert. Yeah.
What's confusing to me is that the hechsher, yes, kasher leme'abrim, yes,
Well-
kasher this, kasher this. It's not all kosher.
So
Yeah,
the word kasher shows up. The word kasher shows up in many different forms. The one that was just mentioned is hechsher. You hear the same letters. You have the ch and the sh and the resh. The three letters are chaf, shin, resh. And hechsher is what I give in the area of agriculture that I deal with. You know what wasn't on the list were the fruits and vegetables. Everything that's grown is mutar. And because it's not an animal, we don't worry about slaughter. So what do I have to do when I'm working with grains and pulses? Well, it's coming out of the field. And since there's no slaughter, it's kasher, it's fit to eat. But between the field, let's take sabra hummus, okay? Sabra hummus is made from garbanzo beans or chickpeas, whichever word you want to use. And they come exclusively from one of my clients on the Palouse. All of Sabra hummus is made from Palouse garbanzo beans, right? They are mutar. They are kasher coming out of the field. My job is to make sure that they stay that way, that they're not contaminated. Delivery to the processing plant, not Sabra, but to they have to be cleaned and sized and everything. And toted, 2,200 pound totes, 8 carloads of 2,200 pound totes a week leave Lewiston on their way to the Sabra plants on the East Coast. I certify that through all of that, they were not contaminated, therefore they are kasher. And Sabra is under OU supervision. It's one of the kosher agencies, kosher certification agencies, and anything coming into the Sabra plant also has to be kasher, kosher certified, and that's my job, to make sure that everything my clients ship out of their shipping docks, whether it's the grain, the peas, the lentils, the beans, anything in that my clients process has to stay uncontaminated. What could contaminate food? Food is a contaminant. Someone's eating a ham sandwich right around the pit as the farm truck dumps them into the pit. That's a problem.
So what do you do then?
I can't give them a certification, so you better believe that they have signage all over. They can't eat or drink anywhere within 25 feet of the pit. Not even water. Water they can drink, but 25 feet away from the pit.
What about animals that would, like,
Pits are covered when they're not in service, just for that reason.
mice and insects?
Rodent control. The pest control guy who handles not only the processing plants, but also the elevators, which is what I've been doing at harvest time, making sure that there's not that kind of a problem around the elevators. 77 elevators for that one client. And so I've become really good friends with the pest control guy who lives not far from Spokane, so we talk a lot. So the great, when I'm doing an inspection, I'm looking for signs that folks are eating around the processing equipment, machines. It's against company rules, but we're human beings. We're not perfect.
Right.
And if I see a Coke can or any wrapper, we got a problem. They have a break room in which they're supposed to eat and drink. Smoking outside. It's every plant that I inspect is a no smoking facility. And I just in the old days, the first days when I started, you want us to do what? You want us to do it? Why?
Yeah.
Now all the laws that we have are part of the USDA, not guidelines, but they have to do them. There's now the HACCP, I mean, it's crazy. But anyway, so today I'm looking at it from a Jewish perspective. They're looking at it from a license perspective. They don't get a license to operate if they're not taking care of these things. So we're pretty simpatico.
Is it the same for fruits and vegetables?
I'm sorry?
Fruit and vegetables?
Absolutely, same thing. I don't deal with the Yakima Valley, but because I just don't want to deal with the black hats.
Because it goes into canning and stuff.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
the same.
Yeah. One client, they boil peas. They have to heat them up and boil them in order to either split them or take the skin off of them. So that's bishul. That's considered cooking, mevashel, and that adds a whole new level of difficulty. As long as we keep it cold, it means unheated, we're good. Once we get into that, now we got other problems. And so the potato industry in central Washington uses heat all the time to do a lot of things. They're already manufacturing food And I try to stay away from that. Sometimes I just got to do it. Yes?
If all the kashrut laws meant for us to be different from the culture surrounding us,
Yeah.
so in my mind, I find it hard to accept that minor contamination of the garbanzo beans is going to destroy all of these objectives to be different from the other culture.
Well, there's no question that one of the big drivers of the kosher market today are allergy sufferers. Allergists all over the country are recommending to their severe allergy patients to look for the kosher label. People with extreme lactose intolerance will look for a D next to the hechsher. Mine has a P, which means it's parv. Actually, it says it on the symbol. But people in the United States, you can have milk product up to a certain percentage of the total volume, and it is considered non-dairy. In Judaism, it's 1/60th. The word mashahu, a little bit. It's 1/60th, and all of my clients' tolerances are 0.30 and then a number. So that's way stricter than 1/60th. So it does make a difference. I mean, allergists who are not Jewish are suggesting to their patients to look for the kosher symbol, and whether it says D or if it doesn't say D, then you know it's okay. It's non-dairy. Some people have other allergies. I meant to tell you before we went afield. We're doing good. Yeah, I plan to be finished at 8 o'clock.
Oh,
Is that okay?
well, I thought you wanted to be on the road earlier.
Oh, no, I said 9, but my wife said, "You're coming home when?" Yeah.
Make it easy on yourself, Rabbi.
Yeah. So here are a couple of things, and then in terms of keeping kosher, there are only 3 main rules you have to worry about. And I'll give you those 3, and I'll be glad to answer other questions. But here's some interesting, there are ironies in the kosher law, okay? Let me give you a couple other words first. Fleischig, now we're talking about Yiddish.
That's the meat, right?
Right. In Hebrew, basar, but you'll never hear that around the shul or anywhere else among Jews. Fleischig, meat. And that was the experiment that the rabbis did about chicken. It's fleischig, it's meat. Okay? Milchig, I used the term a moment ago. Right. Right, basar v'chalav, meat and milk. And then parv, which is neutral. So, fish is parv. Grasshoppers are parv. Fruits and vegetables are parv. That means neutral. Neutral. However, when we prepare them, we typically, other than eating raw, fruit or vegetables, typically we're going to convert them to either milchig or fleischig in the way we cook. If I cook fish with butter, boom, it's milchig.
Right.
All right? If
It's like,
It's
it's a
dairy.
dairy.
dairy,
It has-
milchig, dairy. Sorry, it's really hard for me. I slip into the Talmud stuff, and when since a little boy, I've been raised with these terms, so I sometimes don't think that not everyone is familiar. Eggs, parv, but they come from which is fleischig. Whoa, no kidding.
Yeah, but you still.
Eggs are parv. And you can keep it parv. In fact, a lot of kosher homes have a stash of hard-boiled eggs in the refrigerator to use for whatever, but they're all boiled in a parv kettle, I guess?
An egg pot.
Egg pot, there you go.
Just for eggs.
And also, Manya makes her gefilte fish in that same pot, so that we can eat gefilte fish fleshig or not. Yeah, yeah.
And all of this to be different.
But if you, everything is a degree. For some people, it's real important to be as committed to living as God has told us. And at the other end, there are folks who couldn't give a rip about it. And then there's this whole space in between. So God says in the book of Deuteronomy, I give you this day life and death, good and evil. Do good so you may live, which means you and I have choice. And God can't hit us if we make the wrong choice. That's a real beauty. It's like a parent.
You said you can or you
Cannot.
cannot?
It is as parents.
It's a free choice kind of a
Yeah, as parents. If we tell a kid, your choice, I just hope I've given you enough foundation that you'll make the right choice. But we can't hold them responsible if they make the wrong choice. We gave them the choice. If we're going to hold them responsible, then you better tell them what to do. Well, God has to be ethical. God gave us choice. Just before the Torah ends, God gives us that verse. So it's our choice. God's made it real clear what God thinks the foundation should be, with the help of the rabbis throughout the ages explaining all this stuff. But it's up to us. It's up to us. And why do oftentimes people that we think have everything blow their brains out? They're guilt-ridden about something. Something is going on. Same way with us. Only you and I know when we come to Yom Kippur what's going on in our heart and in our soul. We know what we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do. And God doesn't hold us accountable. But we hold ourselves accountable, and that's what Yom Kippur is about. It's a cheshbon hanefesh. In fact, this is the time right now, Elul, this month. This is the time of taking account of who we are. Of who we are and what we are. Yeah. Okay, so the other irony is honey. Comes from a bee. Bees are asur. Bees are asur. They are forbidden. But yet what they produce is honey, and it's parv. Milk is from a fleishic source, but it's considered dairy. Go figure. What can I say? And my Rebbe taught that for everything you and I are forbidden to eat, God puts something in the world that tastes just like it. And Basar v'chalav, he was in Marseille, not only as a child, but as a rabbi before the war. And he says one of the real delicacies they had was a cow's udder. We don't have it in the U.S., but it's basar v'chalav. It's milk and meat. And that was to represent the cheeseburger and all the other stuff that we can't have our milkshake after a steak or whatever.
I don't eat steak.
You don't eat steak.
I don't eat any red meat.
Oh. You're healthier for it, though. Probably, yeah. Excuse me. Along that line, if you really look at the East European Jewish diet, it's the East European diet. And that's why we hop a lot of schnapps. It's the Roto-Rooter through our veins from all the
Red meat?
Yeah, right, and all the fat.
Cow's udder was okay?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what he was teaching.
Mixed.
That was an example. It's perfectly kosher, but he said it is the softest meat you have ever tasted. And I told my Rebbe, I'll take your word for it. I'll take your word for it. Hey, those of us that grew up at a certain time, we know about cow's brains also. It's perfectly kosher. Oh! Tongue. My wife once tried to slip me some tongue. She knows what I think. And
Where were you?
we were living in Fort Worth, and we were going to do the coastal highway from Northern California all the way down to San Diego. And she didn't want to do the drive out to start it. So I started out, took me 4 or 5 days, and I had a little car trouble, and so I got into Reno really late, and she had packed some sandwiches, frozen, and I took one out, one bite, and I called her up and said, you didn't think I would notice, huh? The dogs had a great dinner that night. Great dinner. Great dinner.
They don't have tongue here.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, they don't have tongue here.
What?
Everything was chicken, everything was
Yeah. Okay. So, three, just enough time. All right. Okay. 3 rules. We can boil it down. There are 3 basic parts to kashrut, okay? You already know the first one. What can we eat? We had that. That's the first thing we ask. What are we allowed to eat? All right? And the only problem are animals. The nuts, fruit, vegetables, all that stuff is okay. And the list is really short in terms of what is mutar. You just have to know what to look for, and you're off and running. Okay? All right. Second, we've already discussed milk and meat. All right? Now, Manya's favorite salad dressing is blue cheese. So when I'm grilling up a steak and she wants milk and meat, can't do it. So what you can do is you put, by the way, not only food has to be separate, but the cooking utensils and the eating stuff is, you have a set for dairy and a set for meat. And so, that's usually, in our house at least, it's, we eat very little that's parve. I mean, except the fruits, and, we're just chomping on them. I don't think, Manya will correct me, I don't think we have a set of parve. What we do have is, that's all duplicated for Pesach. So 4 sets of dishes. And people who are just starting out, I say go with paper and plastic until you know what you want to do. That's the best way. It's the best way. All right. So we have milk and meat dishes, cooking utensils, and the food. Blue cheese with a steak. You put out, use your milk bowls, have the blue cheese. Before the steak comes off the grill, all that's removed. The Torah, the Talmud says the equivalent of brush your teeth or chew some dentine, whichever, and good to roll into the meat. Okay? The other way, though, if we had, let's say we eat the steak, but then we want ice cream for dessert, have to wait. And the average, if you take the most machmir, the most strict, is 3 to 4 hours between eating meat, and not when you finish, when you start. When you start. So the first fork into the mouth of a steak or hamburger or whatever, or chicken, that starts the time. Okay? Yeah. So
It's not even really 3 or 4 hours then. If you've got a beautiful steak or a piece of roast
well,
beef or something.
the people who are really strict wait 6 hours.
Okay, Rabbi.
Okay? Yeah.
So Linda and I
next day.
Yeah.
have this thing going. And I, 40 years ago, studied with Rabbi Solomon Lyman for 4 years
Mm-hmm.
to convert to Judaism.
Yeah.
And I studied for an entire year the laws of kashrut. I ate in some of the dirtiest kosher kitchens you would ever want to see.
Isn't that terrible?
I came away from that knowing that kashrut did not necessarily mean clean. But that's not the way I live. I think we represent a congregation Beth
Okay.
Sholom.
So what we're hearing is there's the letter of the law, and then there's the spirit of the law. Remember, at the beginning we were talking about the halakha and then the spiritual side of it. I don't think those dirty kosher kitchens were very spiritual. They may have been following, I'm sorry.
And they might not have been, but don't forget, some
it's-
of them were, listen, I also met in my early Jewish life the path through people's houses. And some very strange things. I mean, come to find out later on that it's not just significant or, a Jewish thing. I had lived a sheltered life, I guess. I mean, it
Let's put it this way. Let me tell you something. I'll talk about us rabbis. I was 8 years in New York becoming a rabbi. That's 8 years too long for a Texas boy. And I doubt there was a year that went by without some rabbi getting arrested because he was the head of a Jewish home for the aged or a care center or whatever. You either are a rabbi or you're not. You don't have a filthy place. You can't run a filthy place for people to live and call yourself a rabbi. You just can't. Right now, our movement, the conservative movement, is in the forefront of you're running a kosher chicken place or a kosher slaughterhouse or whatever. How are you treating the animal? How are you treating the animal before they're shecht, before they're slaughtered? That's yeah, but that's part of it. That's part of it.
Yeah.
This house where they down in Mississippi last month, where they arrested the illegals, that's a Jewish place.
Yeah.
That's a Jewish place, and what?
Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying?
Well,
How are you treating your people?
But what I'm saying is you could be following the letter of the law and you're missing completely the spirit of the law. And that's why I said you were right in terms of Jews coming together and sitting and eating and so forth. I mean, that's the way we're supposed to do it. That's the way we're supposed to do it. Can we do it every single time? Not at the pace of life that we live today. But come Shabbos, that's a good time.
Yeah.
It's a good time. 1 day out of 7 ain't bad. Isn't bad.
Well, I put cheese on my chicken parmesan.
I won't tell. I won't tell.
so
I'm not your father confessor, so.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's not a cow.
But Linda,
It's,
but that's what I'm asking you.
yes.
Is when I mean, Rabbi Maimon and I actually discussed this because I had the same kind of observation that Linda had going into it. And he said that one thing we did not study was Kabbalah.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it was rooted in Kabbalah and that, no, it isn't necessarily, chicken is not necessarily meat.
The rabbis weren't sure, of course. They weren't sure.
However, there are people who he told me, there are people who are holy enough to do this, but generally people are not. They're not spiritually connected enough
Right.
to assume, no offense or anything like that, that you can eat dairy with chicken.
I would just tell you this, that non-Jews see it long before we ever do. Judaism is not the Judaism of the Torah. The Judaism you and I follow is not Torah Judaism. That's called the Mosaic cult. Judaism in the time of Moses. We are rabbinic Jews, starting in 200 before the Common Era, the beginning of the Talmud. And we live Judaism as the rabbis have explained it to us. Do I know as much as those Talmud rabbis who ran that experiment? No. Does my Rebbe? Yes. Or did my Rebbe? Yes.
Yes.
If he would have told me, that would have been good enough for me.
Yeah.
Been good enough for me. So, and here's another spiritual. Okay, I vote. In the Mishnah it says, get yourself a teacher and sit at his feet. We all need spirituality, and the Kabbalists were some of the best. We don't have many Kabbalists among us today, but my dad just blew his stack when he found out I was studying Kabbalah with the Rebbe. I said, and of course, what would Jack Isaacson do? For his next birthday, I gave him a leather-bound copy of the Zohar, which is the book of Kabbalah.
You gave it to your dad?
As a present. With love from your almost a rabbi son.
Wow.
Yep. Yep, and I have it now. When he passed away, I made sure I got that book.
How old were you? 20, you knew everything?
Oh,
24?
no, I remember I went to Vietnam before I went to rabbinical school, so I would have been 27, 28, 29, somewhere in there.
You knew everything then.
Of course I did. Of course I did. All right. So the three things is you know what we can and can't eat, milk and meat, and the third secret to keeping kosher is know how to read a food label. In the conservative movement, we try to eat have a hechsher because in the processing in manufactured food, you'd be surprised what goes on in manufactured food. And as I've already told you, the Truth in Labeling Act in the United States does allow extraneous stuff. If you knew what was in some hot dogs, you wouldn't eat a hot dog unless it had a kosher certification on it. So what can I tell you? So learn how to read food labels. If you see words like lactose, calcium caseinate, that's dairy. Those are dairy byproducts. In fact, do me a favor. Go to next time you're at a supermarket, go to wherever the non-dairy creamers are, not the liquids but the powders, and look at Carnation. It says non-dairy creamer. And it has an OU, but it has a D sitting next to it. You look at the ingredient label, and it has sodium caseinate, which makes it dairy. And someone with lactose intolerance sees non-dairy creamer. That's for me. Yeah, they're going to have a horrible reaction. I hope they have.
Find a non-dairy cream.
Oh, you got. Well, first of all.
But it's all chemical. Who wants it?
No,
today.
Coffee Rich or something, non-dairy.
Yeah, those are fine. You also now have the almond milk, which is non-dairy, no chemicals. So today we have things that we couldn't even dream of 20 years ago. So it's very cool.
In some places you can find a Coffee Rich, but here no.
Safeway carries it.
What I object to is, so I forget to take my glasses in when I shop, and I'm gonna have to start doing that.
Yeah.
But look at this
so
label.
small.
Okay, so, but look at this, you've got a really nice picture of a salad, and you're looking around for the damn label, pardon me. And it's here. It's here, it's an OU. Yeah, it's hard to see.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, Phoebe and I bought Best Foods mayonnaise, and it is now on the white label, but it is a light mustard color, very thin, very thin writing. It says OU Parv, but it is so light that,
And do you know why?
because they don't want to,
They sell to the Arab countries as well.
Yeah, they want it to be
Right.
kind of.
Pepsi solved that problem another way. They don't ship to Israel. They don't manufacture in Israel. But those, when you see a small little, that's because they're also selling to the Middle East.
Is Pepsi part of the BD?
Yes.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Long time back in the Shell, with Shell Oil. Yeah, they've been after Israel for decades. For decades. What's that?
Circle and K.
Oh, there are a whole host.
No, but I say
There are-
confusing.
Yeah, Circle K is another national. If it has anything with a K on it, I mean, the Vada Kashrut in Seattle has the tower. What you do, Google kosher certification, and there's a whole list.
Because I said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bad goes extremely.
Mine has Spokane Vada Kashrut on it. Yeah.
For the sake of fairness, Pepsi Cola is no longer not doing business with Israel.
Correct.
The bottling company there, and also the Sabra is a joint venture between Pepsi Cola and Nestle from Israel. Yeah.
But their partner, Pepsi has financial interests in Sabra, but they're not. Nobody knows that. But Pepsi in a can or a bottle, it's obviously Pepsi Cola, and they chose to sell to the Arab countries, and it was part of the boycott.
but in Europe, when I traveled in Greece in 1979, my friend, you could buy Coke, and that was way, way before all of this. But you couldn't get Pepsi.
Yeah, when I was in
She
Europe, you
brought
couldn't
two
either.
six-packs of Pepsi in her suitcase because she had to have a Pepsi when she popped the lid. And we came from Scotland, but she popped the lid every morning. She had to have her Pepsi before she even got out of bed. It's like her first cup
Yeah,
of
when I
coffee.
was in
Yeah,
Germany and
Yeah, you don't see Pepsi. Oh, yeah.
in
Go ahead.
Austria,
I'm sorry.
I couldn't find
Is it just
Pepsi.
Yeah, you only
easier to
find
be
Coke.
vegetarian?
It's not, the question is it easier to be vegetarian? Yeah, sure. But if God wanted us to be a vegetarian, we wouldn't have any of this in the Torah. People say, well, that just proves that God wanted us to be a vegetarian. No, God didn't. In fact, the whole story of Noah is about making sure that there were food sources after a flood.
No, it's just easier, probably.
Yeah, I heard that. But Jewish life,
This is easy.
in Yiddish we say, es ist schwer zu sein ein Yid. It's tough to be a Jew. It's supposed to be a little difficult. Good things don't come easily.
I just thought if you don't know enough.
Oh, but that's why, it's exactly, if we don't know enough, that's why I broke it down to 3 easy rules. Know what you're eating. Don't mix milk and meat. And know how to read an ingredient label. End of conversation. That's easy. The rest we learn as we go. But those are the 3 basics. You start getting into, oh, is this? No, keep it simple. We know what we can eat. Not what's forbidden, but we know what we can eat. We know we're not supposed to eat milk and meat at the same time. And lastly, know how to read an ingredient label.
Is that time's up?
Boom.
My kid's better.
Okay? And it is, in 30 seconds, it's 8 o'clock. I did it. I did it. So you remember that when my sermon goes long on Yom Kippur, okay? I do know how to.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much. I thank you. I'm thrilled that y'all have interest in understanding kashrut, doing it to whichever degree you may or may not want to do. But most Jews couldn't give a rip one way or the other, and I'm thrilled that y'all have that interest.
You know, one of the other things here is.
I'm not saying doing; they don't care to know. You know, we Jews somehow have made ignorance a value here in the United States.
Yeah, we talk about that all the
Anathema
time.
to Jews.
Right?
Yeah, we used to be exempt,
Yeah.
but we're not anymore.
No, we're just like everybody else, unfortunately.
The thing is, a lot, you hear the talk, well, why are we in the conservative movement? What's it do for us? And we really feel like we're left out in the cold. And some of the things you hear are, well, I wish we didn't have a kosher kitchen, but I think, you know, you're in the synagogue and we should go to the highest standards rather than the lowest standards.
So even if we became reform or non-affiliated, we should still fight to keep a kosher kitchen.
It'll be.
Because
The idea, we rabbis are, my Rebbe Beth Sholom used to say, Eza dugma, what kind of example does the rabbi set? And today, especially in synagogues that don't have a rabbi, Eza dugma, what kind of example does the synagogue set for its members?
Not easy.
And if kashrut is important to some, then it needs to be. Hadassah went through a real war on this subject. Used to be that all Hadassah conventions were kosher because you try to go to the highest level. And then they said, you know, it's not worth the problem, and people really got PO'd. Even those that didn't keep kosher. What do you mean? It's a Jewish organization. Da, 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 da. Well, a synagogue is supposed to be setting an example. If it's a Reformed congregation, then it's still a guideline.
Our
It's still a
Reformed
guideline.
Congregation had 2 kitchens, one for meat and one for dairy.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Oh, and I have to say that Reform congregations have gone way.
Oh, yeah.
they're
You and I remember the classical reform, which you were told by an usher to take your yarmulke off, and you take your talis off.
There was no talis.
I was a Boy Scout in a troop from the Reformed Temple, and so Scout Sabbath and my friends being bar bat mitzvah, whatever. Oh yeah, many times at Temple Emmanuel in Houston, told to take off my kippah and take off the.
We didn't even
Yeah.
have them at Temple Emmanuel in Spokane.
Well, that's classical reform.
Right,
The reform movement has changed.
right, and they didn't really learn Hebrew, and they didn't really follow the holidays.
They now have cantors.
Oh, I know, my sister,
Yeah.
And they read the Torah on Friday.
Well, but understand why.
Ours wasn't like that.
Understand why they read the Torah on Friday. They didn't have Shabbos morning services, so if you didn't read it on Friday, everyone grows up not even knowing what the Torah is.
I know, they have bar mitzvahs on Friday night, because Saturday they go to church.
At least they were doing that.
Yes.
But now the movement's changed.
Yeah,
It really has.
Ours was more strict than you guys are.
Wow.
I mean, my kid had to go to Saturday service